This hour, we're going to be talking to the the CEO of KIE. There's something interesting you need to know about your children's curriculum. That's coming up shortly. We'll also be talking to some representatives from the from Stanchart to be telling us about the marathon and why exactly you should care about it and why it's so important for you to be listening to them. We'll also be hosting Johnston Kavulundi. He is the chairperson of the Police Service Commission, which was recently instituted, to tell us about the search for an Inspector General. Do stay tuned for that. But right now, I'm joined by Lydia Nzomo. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Perhaps we should begin by you telling us what KIE does, the Kenya Institute of Education. I don't think many people know. They just assume that you churn out books and that's it.
Yes. Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Kenya Institute of Education is the national institution that develops curriculum for all the levels of learning in this country below the university. Indeed, development of curriculum is a process, it's not an event. So in the process of coming up with the syllabuses, they also do develop curriculum support materials. So that is the core function, and all that is informed by research. Therefore, what it means is that the institute undertakes research, and from the findings of the research, curriculum is developed.
All right.
That is our core function.
The cabinet recently approved a bill which is now going to be in Parliament, rather it's been in Parliament. That's the KICD bill. Briefly talk to us about that and tell us what KICD stands for.
Thank you. Yeah, this is Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. Over the years, the institute has had the name of Kenya Institute of Education, but that is a very general term. Doesn't actually indicate the core function of the institute. This is why the institute has come up with this bill to change the name from Kenya Institute of Education to Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development.
All right.
Yeah.
Is it just the changing of the name, or does your mandate change if this bill is enacted into law?
It changes the mandate in the sense that the institute is not just going to deal with matters related to the ministry in charge of education, because curriculum needs to be developed for all ministries, departments of ministries, parastatals, and even the private sector. So the bill actually expands the mandate of the institute to cover these other institutions and not to deal with only the Ministry of Education.
All right. Which institutions are we talking about in particular?
We are talking about any government ministry that requires curriculum to be developed, and this happens on department of the ministry. You are aware that not very long time ago, the institute developed curriculum for training of the police officers,
right,
and that's not within the Ministry of Education. Indeed, the other day, we did even develop curriculum for voter education. Meaning that we do even with the constitutional commissions. So this is an institute that then will be freely developing curriculum for almost every institution below the university.
I know the institute will also be in charge of foreign curricula. Explain to us how that works. And I understand that anyone has to come for approval to the institute to get curriculum approved.
That is the right thing to do, because this will mean setting up standards. At the moment, anybody, local or a foreigner, can come up with a curriculum and implement this on our learners, our children, and yet it has not been vetted. So to standardize and ensure that all our learners do get curriculum that is of quality and that addresses the values of the country, the institute will then evaluate and vet all curricula being offered to the learners, because we look at the learners as Kenyan children, Kenyan citizens, and we have no private citizens. So all the citizens should be taken through curriculum that is quality, that has been vetted, that has gone through the evaluation system.
All right, you've rightly put it that KIE is definitely going to have its mandate expanded. Do you have the capacity to deal with these roles?
Yeah, the mandate is there because curriculum development is a consultative process. While as the institute leads in the curriculum development, you find that in the process, stakeholders are involved. Indeed, we deal with all the stakeholders, I mean university lecturers, industrialists, manufacturers, teachers, and almost even sponsors, we deal with the public, and we involve them in the process. And the KIE staff just act as the lead. But we have the mandate because we are dealing and we do involve everybody in curriculum development.
All right. Why should parents be concerned by this? Because there's some who might be watching and thinking, okay, how does this change my child's learning?
The parents are mainly concerned, many of them, they are concerned with taking their children to school. And they are very trusting. They believe that once their children have gone to school, the children are taken through the right process and the learners are being taken through the right content. And therefore, it's a relief to the parents to hear that the institution is now going to be in charge and to ensure that whatever content their children are taken through is the right content, it's helpful content, and the learners are not being misled in any way. So to me, that one is actually a comfort to the parents.
Okay. You did mention something about standardizing the curriculum across the board. Yeah. How do you plan to do that? I mean, are there things you're going to introduce in the new curriculum that weren't there previously? Are there things you're going to take out?
Curriculum changes. I don't think there's anything that changes as frequently as curriculum, because curriculum actually is the programs. We are talking about programs that learners are taken through. So when we talk about standardization, is ensuring that anytime any changes in the society are included in the curriculum. For example, now we have Vision 2030. We also have our new constitution, and it's a must that the curriculum must very quickly address the dictates of both the vision and the constitution. So issues of the constitution that are not in the current curriculum are definitely going to be included. When we are talking about Kenya Vision 2030, it means that the curriculum has to be adjusted so that it's able to produce citizens who can lead the country through Vision 2030. Issues in the curriculum, in the constitution that need to be addressed are mainly issues of integrity, issues of chapter 6 of the constitution need to be introduced to Kenyans when they are young, so that as they grow, they know issues of values, they know issues of integrity. At the same time, the curriculum is going to look at the talents of the learners and develop curriculum that actually promotes talents. We don't expect everybody to have one talent. There are varied talents. And even issues of leadership will come into it. And as I've mentioned, issues of citizenship and patriotism are going to be emphasized in the curriculum that won't be developed once this bill goes through Parliament. Okay.
I understand that the bill and the institute is indeed looking at early childhood development especially. Why is that?
Early childhood education is actually the foundation of every individual, and it is very, very important that this is handled in a professional manner, because during the 5 first years of life, that's when many skills are developed in an individual that are built on later. Therefore, it's very, very important that this early childhood education is founded on a curriculum that is researched and that is appropriate, so that the children are given the content that is suitable for them at that particular age, and the content that helps the learners to develop mainly their mental skills at that age, their psychomotor skills at that age, and then those ones can be built on later.
Right. Yeah. And this is going to apply both in private and public schools, you said?
Oh, yes, I mentioned that we have no private children. Schools could be private, but the children are Kenyan children, and they all need to be taken through a curriculum that is properly researched and developed through a consultative process.
All right. And as we wind up, perhaps you had mentioned that the children will probably have to learn and acclimatize themselves to the issues of Vision 2030, the Constitution. Yeah. How does this play out as we look forward? You know, the country is really looking to grow and develop. How does this grow the education sector?
The growth of the country in terms of economy and other aspects will depend on the education of the country. We are told that education is also informed by curriculum. In fact, it is said that curriculum defines society. So the type of curriculum that we have is the one that will inform the education of the country, of the citizens, and then that education is the one, it's really going to be the tool to guide the country to get the right skills, the right human resource in moving the country through Vision 2030. We are talking about the skills. What are the skills and competencies that are required by the Kenyans if they are going to be a middle level economy? What skills do they require? Is education preparing Kenyans for job creation? For example, is it giving them skills that will be applicable in life? Or is education just going to give the learners a chance to memorize content and reproduce it? Because that can never take us to Vision 2030. Right. We are looking for the skills. Yes.
You've just outlined some of the gaps that our curriculum probably faces right now. What would you say is the major challenge with our curriculum as it is?
The curriculum at any one stage serves the needs of the country at that stage when it is developed. Let's take our school curriculum, which was developed in 2002, 10 years ago. That curriculum then met the needs of the society at that time. But 10 years down the line, a lot of changes have taken place. And therefore, we see them as gaps because society has changed. The other issues that have come in, as I've mentioned, issues of Vision 2030 that were not there, issues of the new constitution, they were not there, even issues of international cooperation like East African community, right. They were not there then, and therefore the curriculum needs to be revised to actually address the new needs. It is the needs that come, like the ones I've just mentioned, that we see as gaps because those issues were not there when the curriculum was revised.
And speaking of revision of the curriculum, who exactly does it at KIE and how does it work? Is it just teachers who come in and say, okay, fine, now add Vision 2030? How does it work?
Oh, as I mentioned, it's a process actually. It's not even an event. What happens is that the institute, together with other arms of the ministry, will always undertake a needs assessment. That is a research to find out what are the gaps in society, what are Kenyans saying, what do they say they need. So it's a research that is carried out by the institute, spearheaded by the institute, but the one that involves also other educators. Once that is done, then the report of that research is deliberated upon and it is decided upon by the highest body in the Institute for Curriculum Development. Is referred to as the academic committee. They will look at the report and find out really what are the issues that need to be looked at. And of course, the Ministry of Education is involved for policy decision. Once it is agreed that the type of curriculum to be developed will include A and B, C, then the Institute organizes panels. Curriculum development is done through panels, and these panels will then involve teachers, university lecturers, as I mentioned, manufacturers, industrialists, and these panels would work under the guidance of a KIE officer to look at what are the goals of education, what are the objectives. Those ones are set, and then the syllabuses are developed because curriculum is packaged into syllabuses. Right. So that if we are talking about Standard 5, for example, the curriculum will involve syllabuses in English, in Kiswahili, in geography, all that. Right. So the syllabuses are then developed, which indicate the level, the content, how much content should be at that level. For example, in Form 1, what is the content in history as compared to the content in Form 4? The depth and the breadth of the curriculum. It is done during the design. After that, the syllabuses are written, and then the syllabuses, after they have gone through the subject panels, they are taken through what we call the course panel. So that if it is the primary school course panel, it looks at all the syllabuses for primary schools, which had been done by subject panels. And those ones are taken to the academic committee of the institute. It is the academic committee that approves the syllabuses.
It's a very long and strenuous process that involves quite a number of people.
Yeah.
Obviously, this bill hasn't been passed into legislation, but if it does, how often do you plan to review the syllabus? Because you've said it's an evolving thing.
Yes, it's involving and necessary, but by international standards, curriculum of any country is reviewed after every 5 years.
Okay.
Because within 5 years, the curriculum gets reviewed. But in between, if something comes up, for example, that requires to be addressed through the curriculum, then that one can be handled in a subject, in an area. Because if there is any change that society wants to be introduced to the learners, it can only be done through the curriculum. There are times one is told, let's have this one introduced, let this one be taught in schools. But it can't be taught in schools unless it has been factored in the curriculum and gone to the schools in form of a syllabus so that the teachers are able to implement it. So internationally, 5 years is acceptable, but in between, the curriculum can also be reviewed in a subject or in a topic.
All right, and going back to the bill, I know it proposes stiff penalties, including jail term of up to 3 years and a fine of up to 1 million shillings or both if schools are found to be flouting the law. Did you think it was necessary to institute such strict policies?
Yes, it should have been introduced like yesterday, because what we are saying is that the only way to protect really the children and ensure that the children are getting the right content is by instituting such a measure. We know that if that is not done, then you get learners being exposed to any type of content. And when they are exposed to any type of content that is not vetted, then the sufferer is the individual and the country in the long last. In fact, you know the role of the Kenya Bureau of Standards, the way they vet products before they are taken, whoever has done the manufacturing. This is what we are talking about, vetting of the curriculum so that the learners are taken through the right content. If we allow individuals to develop curriculum which has not gone through this elaborate process we have talked about, which is very involving and accommodates everybody, there is a danger of learners getting less than they should be getting or getting content that is not appropriate.
All right.
Yes.
And finally, as we wind up, why is it so important that KIE changes its name through this whole process?
The most important thing is not even the changing of the name. But as I mentioned at the beginning, the reason for the name being changed is to be in line also with the standard trends where institutions are given names according to their function. So the real function of the institute is actually curriculum development, which is a whole process involving about 80 stages. And that is the core business. It clarifies what the institute does. When it is called Kenya Institute of Education, it is vague.
Right.
Where people might not know exactly what it is that the institute is doing. Is it a department of the ministry? It is general. But curriculum development, that is specific. It defines the role of the institute.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you very much for coming into studio this morning and sharing with us the intricacies and some of the highlights of the bill. Remember, for the parents who are watching, at the moment, there is no law or regulation of curricula. And as Lydia has very rightfully pointed out, many parents do not even know what their children are taught, and more so in private schools. So do have a look at this bill, and KTN will definitely be following it for you to see where it reaches. And thank you so much for coming into studio once again. All right, we take a short commercial break. When we come back, I hope you have your running shoes on because we're talking about running. It's a Stanchart Marathon and how it's going to help so many children get their vision. Stay tuned.